So the next series I produced was Action. And at this point, I felt I'd overdone the multiple self-portrait idea, or the multiple with Robbie, because it was out there and everywhere in the press, everywhere in galleries, and I was getting a reputation as that's what I was producing, that's what I was doing. So I thought I'd produce a new series of work in a slightly different way, and I produced this body of work based around sort of action figures, action heroes. So it was supposed to be James Bond and Die Hard, really, and a little bit, in some cases, of Indiana Jones, I suppose. But it was another great masculine icon, I saw it as. They were produced in a similar way. This time I was shooting on medium format digital. I was scanning in as very, very high commercial res images, so I could take the images a lot larger than I've ever done before. But they were shot in a slightly different way in that they were all shot from below. So these images were intentionally shot so they could be mounted on the ceiling in light boxes. So you stood underneath these pictures and you looked up into them. And the idea with that was really that these are icons that you looked up to. And I wanted that to be a physical act, almost looking up at the sort of paintings you would get inside churches and alike. Of course, the great advantage that I didn't think about at the time, but later came to bear, was the fact that if you put a piece of work on the ceiling, very, very few galleries have work on the ceiling. So if they're putting on a mixed gallery exhibition, they've always got ceiling space. So I would often get put into an exhibition where they'd think, well, actually, we could add this work in a very, very large space. We could have 2 or 3 in the middle of a room because it doesn't impact on what else we're showing. So I would get put into shows, not because of that reason, I hope, but certainly because it was an easy thing to add into an exhibition. Although these things are incredibly expensive to produce. Just the printing and the light box alone cost me £1,000. So if you're thinking of producing a work like this, they were 50 by 60 inch prints, so probably about the same as we're seeing projected on the screen. So if you wanted to have something of that scale, it's going to cost, and there's very little you can do about that. But it was a very, very popular series once again. It was shown at Robert Sanderson Gallery in Cork Street in London to start with, and I sold nearly half the series at the first opening exhibition, this picture being the most popular one. Again, as your reputation as an artist grows, then you're enabled to charge slightly more, larger the scale of work. It was very museum-based work because this wasn't the type of thing that most people would have in the house, so I could pitch it at that level. So there's sort of the value of it went up to sort of 7,000 to 9,000 at that point, which was obviously problematic in terms of trying to ensure that you sold enough, but in the end it paid off. This was my favourite image of the series as well, because what I was trying to do with this body of work was trying to get over the idea of the mortal, immortal character. I jumped in my bedroom too many times and did that little leap of faith and tried to work out how far I could jump. And the front foot of that man is about as far as I could reach leaping across, which I thought was quite good. But actually, if it was James Bond or Bruce Willis or whoever, you know that that man is going to make it to the other side of that building because he's James Bond and he's going to be able to do that. So I wanted to present that. Is he, isn't he? This moment of faith, of jumping across that gap. And it really came out of this picture, Yves Klein, shot by Harry Skunk. And this is a fabricated image as well, shot a long time before my image was put together. It was shot as 2 elements, background and man leaping. But it was supposed to recreate a story that supposedly happened if the artist actually jumped off that building and landed comfortably on his feet, not something he wanted to repeat for the camera, apparently. But once they created this picture, they distributed it as real, and it appeared all over the press, and it then became a bit of an icon image. So you can sort of get inspiration from a whole variety of sources. Technically, with this series, they were all shot directly upwards, which made putting the pictures together a little bit easier, because no matter where I was, I could put spirit level on top of my camera, ensure it was flat surfaced, and therefore by shooting upwards, I would always be able to get the same angle on the camera. Providing I shot with the same lens, things tended to sort of fit together a bit easier than I originally anticipated. This type of work as well led naturally to other things. This was a commission that I got from Lloyd's underwriters. This is the inside of the Lloyd's building. Originally, they called me in and said, we'd like one of your pictures. It was going to go in the front reception of the Lloyd's building and light the reception area. I pitched the idea of a Harley Davidson leaping from one side of the building to the other with glass shattering everywhere and flames coming out behind it. And they loved the idea until the 9/11 thing happened, which was just about the time I produced this, which obviously then a financial institution exploding, lots of glass and et cetera, wasn't such a good idea after all. So we rethought it and came up with this sort of crouching tiger, hidden dragon image. And I had to have their logo tattooed along one of my arms, which when someone's paying, unfortunately, that's one of those things that you're willing to sacrifice.